We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around, and helping good parents carry on. Standing united, we'll overcome. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen who will be watching this. It's all about Family Fest, and we're talking Children's Week. And this topic we're focusing on today is who or what is molding your mind. Let's give a little context here. In Barbados, we're a small country with a few natural resources, and therefore a lot depends on our human capital. We need citizens who love their families and their countries, who will make the most of their education and become gainfully employed when they leave school. Our country needs citizens who can manage the ups and downs of life without crumbling, and who naturally exhibit a host of pro-social behaviors, knowing how to get along with others and how to work as part of a team. So, what influences our behavior? Behavior begins in the mind, and so the real question is, what shapes the way we think? The norms and values that we adopt, the things we do and don't do, in fact, our whole perspective on life. For centuries, behavioral scientists have debated whether the mindset that influences a person's behavior is due to human nature, or rather to their environment and the sum total of things they learn as they grow up. Is our behavior a matter of nature, nurture, or both? When a child is born, is their mind a clean slate that we can write on as we choose? Or does the mind come pre-programmed? So that is a lot to think about in the very early stages of this conversation. And as a part of this conversation, I want to welcome Dr. Veronica Evelyn and Mr. Cornelius Bartlett. Good evening.
Good evening, Carol.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I am great.
Trying to stay safe.
Well, what a way to be doing something like this. And I want to congratulate the Family Fest team, first of all, for putting this together. But in the season that we're in, we're being shown that things have to be done differently, hence this whole Zoom conversation. But the family dynamic, even families have had to adjust to this. But this week is Children's Week, and we want to focus on who or what is molding your mind. So let's get straight into the conversation. What are your views about the nature-nurture debate? So let's start with, normally we go with ladies first, but that's too easy, and Family Fest is not about being easy. So Cornelius, what are your views about the nature-nurture debate?
Well, thanks, Carol. And first of all, let me say that this topic is one that I'm very passionate about. I'm extremely passionate about children, because I know that the children are our future. And if I live long enough to be old, I want to know that I'm old with a society that has produced great children who will then be great adults when I'm old. But in terms of nature versus nurture, I don't think I don't think they're opposing. I think it's a combination of both. I think that you are born with we all know, those of us who are into faith, we all know that you're born with a sin nature. So we know that an element of yourself is nature, but then you hear train up a child in the way they should go. That's nurture. So I believe that this debate will probably inevitably take the route of looking at the combination of both towards getting the finished product, a great finished product out of our children. Because bear in mind that a child is really a miniature adult. And whatever happens, whether nature or nurture, the combination of each, it's almost like a cake. I see children like a finished product, and I see what goes in as recipes. So the elements of those recipes will determine the finished product. So if you, for example, make a cake and your flavors or the combination of flavors are not right, your finished product will also speak to that as well. Children are no different. So nature versus nurture is a combination of both.
Okay. So I'm going to get back to you about this cake, though. I'm going to get back to you about this cake because I want you to bear this in mind. Sorry. My father was a baker, and there are often times where, as bakers, we put in all of the right ingredients, but something happens, and for some reason, the cake that we did the same thing with yesterday comes out just fine. But we try to bake that same cake next week. Same ingredients, at least we think so, different results. So I want you to explain a little bit more, going to when you do all things right, you put the right ingredients, but that cake, for some reason, it burns, something happens. So Veronica, let's come to you. What are your views about the nature-nurture debate?
One, I find it absolutely intriguing. I always have. And like Cornelius says, as people of faith, we know that the Bible says we are born in sin. We have a sin nature. We can't do much about that. Well, as the child gets older, they might give their hearts to the Lord, and that helps. But then there is the environment, and we cannot deny that the environment has a really great impact on who we become. You know, there's this saying about children learning what they live. And it seems to me that children tend to learn more easily the negatives that they live. So that all the positive things that you put in are very easily forgotten, and that, I suppose, is because of the sin nature, and the negatives are easily learned, so that for a parent, it is, and even for us as adults, because we have to manage ourselves as well, and we have to mold our minds as well, although they've been molded quite a bit before, but we have to be so careful to putting a whole lot of positives, because the negative is so easily grasped. As my daughter would say, values are not taught, they are caught.
I like that. Values are not taught, they're caught. I tell you, I don't know about some people, but growing up as a child, some of those values seem to have missed my head completely. But thank God, I caught them along the way somewhere. Anyway.
Hallelujah.
So thanks to great parents who, I thought were very, very tough. They were very tough, but hey, that's just the way it was. Now, Cornelius, let's come back to this cake. Let's come back to this cake. The realities of life. You're a parent. I know Dr. Veronica is a parent as well. I am a parent. And one of the things, I think sometimes you go in with this idealistic thing when you become a parent. You have all these things in your head for your child, especially if you're a person of faith and you know the right way, you know what God wants. You have all of these thoughts as to how you're going to raise these children, and then these children or that child, and then you use your word as the base, or the word as the basis. However, you then have this child, and then you realize it's not as easy as it looks. You do what you're supposed to do, or at least you try to, but you realize that this child, this cake, it's not quite what you think. So let's talk about when you do the right things, but you get different results. Not necessarily bad results all the time, but very different results. How do you manage that where that child-parent dynamic is concerned?
Okay, first of all, this topic will probably take maybe 3 hours, but I'm going to try to give you the compressed version.
Yeah.
Um, Children, first of all, are a great learning exercise. I mean, for me personally, as a parent, I'm now a grandparent as well. I have two grandsons.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Um, it's a learning experience, but what I can tell you is that there's no manual, as we all of us know, in terms of raising children. But what I did is, personally, I did a lot of trial and error with the best intentions. I did a lot of trial and error. But there's some things I want to draw to the attention of listeners or viewers. Children are always learning. That's the first thing. So we think about learning as just speaking or bringing your child and running through the Bible and doing a devotion. Children are sponges. So they're always learning whether you realize it or not. So what you need to do, you need to be very imaginative. And you need to, well, I know everybody is not a believer, but you need to allow God to help you to download and operationalize strategies. Let me give an example of what I mean. One of the things I did with my son, for example, from very early, is that I exposed him to a lot of sports. Now, there's some persons who, for example, think that sport is just a waste of time. What I found is because my son was being raised in a middle class sort of environment, he never would have normally had a chance to interact with children from the ghetto and children from different echelons and so on. What sports did is it taught him how to be able to relate to and communicate with persons of various social backgrounds. Okay? Now, you asked the question about having the same ingredients in a cake on one day and then getting a different result on another day. One of the things that you'll realize that if you check the oven, you might realize that one of the burners went out, or that maybe your father opened the door maybe 2 or 3 times more than he should have. So I'm telling you that even though we may not realize it, I'm telling you, things are constantly, the environment never stays stable. Things are constantly happening in the environment that is always trying to influence and impact your children. And all you can do is do your best. And I'll tell you this before we close up on this point. I would want to say this to all parents. You're not supposed to be trying to be your children's best friend. You're supposed to do the best by your children, whether they like it or not. And here's what happens. They may become a season when they become teenagers where they may hate you or appear to hate you. I'm telling you, a time will come when they will come back and thank you for the values that you instilled. I have had to make a lot of tough decisions, Carol, as a father for my children. And why did I make those tough decisions? Not because I didn't feel like giving them what they wanted. I always want to make sure that I'm looking out for their best interests down the road. There are too many people, I think, that are living their lives and raising their children for the present. Whatever the children want to do or whatever they want to give them because they don't want to offend their children. I believe that everything that we do with our children ought to be done in love and ought to be done in wisdom. And on that note, I would say that to date, Carol, and as I said, I know everybody doesn't believe in God or the Bible and all that, but to date, Cornelius Bartlett has not seen a better manual for raising children than the Word of God. I have not seen it.
I like that. So takeaways, not every day is the same. Don't beat yourself up. Do what you have to do for your children in love. And you can't be your child's best friend. It's that simple. That might come later on down the road as adults. So let's talk about the traditions of home, school, and church being the main institutions that are said to influence our children and their mindset. So Dr. Veronica, let's talk about that. What do you feel about this? Is this the way it should be? It has been traditionally. Is this the way it should be? And if not, what should we do going forward? How can we make it better as it relates to influencing our children's mindsets for the better?
Okay, let's backtrack a bit because, back to the cake. I think that's an excellent analogy. You put in the right ingredients and so on, but what we have to remember is that we are not the only ones making this cake. The mind is constantly, I think Cornelia said it, constantly absorbing everything, every single stimulus, everything you see, everything you hear, everything you touch is going into your mind, so that it is not as if we are the only persons putting in, and whatever we put in, we make our cake, have the right temperature in the oven, and everything is hunky-dory. No, sir. Besides, children have minds. Children are not just passive learners. So that before, things were a bit easier because you had the family and you also had the extended family. You had school and church, and the family was saying the same thing as the school, and the school was saying the same thing as the church. Children went to school, and everything was very much together. Now it's different. We're raising a completely different generation of children, and it takes wisdom. I'm glad Cornelius said that the Bible is a manual, because when you said there is no manual, I thought, yeah, there is a manual. That book of Proverbs tells you so much about raising children, about molding minds, so that we in 2020, our challenge, the challenge to parents and the challenge to everybody who has a mind, which is everybody, is to sift through all the stimuli that come to us. You know, what are the things that we are seeing on TV? What are the things we're hearing on the radio? When our children go to the bus stop, are they going to see a big sign that says stop RH littering? So that in their minds, they're going to go to school and make fun of the RH. What are they seeing? And you know, the whole society speaks. You see a billboard, you pass a cinema and you see a particular picture, all of that. I have been very, very upset at something that I noticed outside of Combermere School. Now, I think Combermere has maybe 1,000, maybe more than 1,000 students. And outside Combermere School, there is this big, beautiful, very, very attractive poster. And do you know what it says? Have fun, just play. And then underneath it says, use a condom every time. And this is the message that 1,000 of our children are seeing every single day as they come to school, as the bus passes, as they go back home. You know, how many children, because it's right outside Combermere. And this, I think, is really irresponsible, because we don't understand how subconsciously we can absorb things.
And messages are actually implanted in the mind.
Oh, yes, definitely. Have you ever heard yourself singing a song that you don't know? It happens. Yeah, it happens. You say, wait, where did I know that song from? And the words are coming and the tune is coming and you haven't a clue where you heard it, but it's in your mind. That's the power of the mind.
Can I jump in here, Carol?
Sure.
Because you know, I was there itching with something that just came back to me as Dr. Evelyn was speaking. You know, this is going to come down to an issue or conversation about values. And where do those values come from? What measures of combinations do we need or that we observe that are getting into our children's value system? Now, I remember as a little boy, and I thank God for the parents I had. People nowadays seem to think that values have gone out of style. They have not gone out of style. People believe, let me tell you something. When I was a boy growing up at primary school, and I'd be walking the road and I would find a toy car on the road. And I took home that toy car. You know what would happen? My mom, who was very observant, would say, where you got that car from? I said, I found it down the road next to the road by the sidewalk. She would say, let me tell you what to do. Go back to that sidewalk and put it back where you found it.
Right back where you found it, yes.
Now that right there is value system, and that's the reason why today I find it impossible to steal in any form, cheat, because here's what's happening. This conversation that we are having about children is really a conversation about adults, simply because we have a situation right now in the world with corruption. And you know why? And I'm not gonna make any sport in terms of making this clear statement, right? The reason why we have a departure from value systems and we have such a rise in the prevalence of corruption in the world, because corruption is about human beings. It's not cows or horses or sheep. It's human beings who are once a baby, human beings who are once children, and human beings who for some reason fail to be imparted to the value systems that would make them responsible, uncorrupted individuals. And as a result of the departure from the value systems that we grew up on, there are a set of people who believe that, you know, the old value systems, they're too sophisticated to impart the value systems to their children. So what they do is they allow their children to be left to television screens, to YouTube, to all of these things. And I don't wanna do your job, Carol, but really and truthfully, I hope we get to the point where we can talk about what happens to the mind of a child that trains them to depart from values that they're being taught to embrace values that are coming from over and away by the screen. I think that's a critical part of this conversation in terms of nature or nurture. Because we're talking, children are always absorbing, and I'm saying that a lot of the devices, whether it's a cell phone, a tablet, television, these are the devices that are imparting values to our children.
I have to jump in here as well, because where I wanted to go is the difference between the generations and the fact that you're talking about devices. We're talking about social media, the internet. I didn't have a cell phone. We didn't have cell phones. I mean, there was a point where, depending on where we were at in a family dynamic, because first of all, I would like viewers to understand there's no judgment here as to whether you have the perfect family, whatever that looks like or not. I came from a situation where my family was very volatile. There was violence involved, and as children, we would sit down, or we would almost have this thing as to when something was about to kick off. And my brother, right after me, we would sit in the bedroom, and our plan as children, we're children, still in primary school, as children would be, okay, we're gonna make sure that if anything happens, we are there to stop the violence. Children shouldn't take on that responsibility. So if you are in a volatile situation, I get it, I totally understand. Not every family has it all together. We're here to learn. But let's go, we're not even getting to that part where there's violence or anger or whatever involved in the family, because that definitely can shape the mindset of children. Let's talk about the era that we happen to be in. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet. My son cannot believe dial-up is hilarious to him. The whole dial-up internet thing, hilarious to him. And how that is influencing our children, because you talk about the tablets and the cell phones and all those kind of things that influence our children. I would like to put this even further. Who buys the tablets? Who buys the cell phones? Who gives them access to things? You know, they have the smart TVs, but parents aren't putting the parental lock and guidance on it and things like that. So let's get into the present. How much of where we are now, as in social media and internet, is influencing the mindset of our children? And what can we do? Because I mean, it sounds really good, but we need to give people some practical advice as it relates to really bringing their children back, bringing themselves as parents, and putting in more positive influence. So Dr. Veronica, I want to come to you where that is concerned. The modern day influence
Carol,
of the internet and cell phones and all those kind of things.
you have said it so very well. Our children are growing up in a very different way. As a matter of fact, I remember when I did my studies, I actually looked at adolescent interface with TV and the internet. And it just occurred to me, hey, children are really their own socializing agents. They choose what will socialize them. It's not just the family. They ain't going to church, and school sometimes has some funny little values that seep through, so that a child is exposed to a whole lot of negativity, and the society itself enables that kind of mindset. Now, we are told in the Bible that we should really protect our hearts, guard it, because out of it are the issues of life. And there's this saying, I'm not sure who exactly said it, that you go from thoughts to actions, from actions to habits, from habits to character, and from character to destiny. So that what we can do, we won't be popular. And I think that's the most hurtful thing as a parent. You don't like your child to tell you, oh, such and such a person's mom does this, or such and such a person's parents are not like you. But we were not made parents to be our children's friends. We were made, God gave them to us for us to work with Him in bringing them up. And as we go along, we let them go and then we hand them back over. So I think one, you mentioned, Carol, the controls. We should really check what our children are looking at. If they have their smartphones, put controls on it so that we know they cannot access certain sites. I think parents in these cases, and depending on the child, ought to violate their children's privacy. I should know what my child's PIN is so that I can check through their phone and what they've been doing. And I can tell you that there are lots of parents who have been shocked at what their
they
children
find.
are doing on the phone. Yeah. So don't tell me I have a child 8, 9, 10, 14, and I can't know what they're doing, because let's look at it. You see, it's like psychological gymnastics. In the natural, I mean, in the physical world, we have no problem saying to our children, okay, I think these friends are good for you. I don't want you going to this person's house. We don't see anything wrong with that. Yet, we see something wrong with going on a child's tablet and saying, I don't want you visiting this site. It's the very same thing. So that parents have to be in control. And again, I go back to my study. At one school, this young guy, he was just so lovely. And he said, Ma'am, the parents have to keep updating. And it's true.
It's very true.
The children know so much more about the parents, even if you try to block them and you try to check out what they're looking at. If they're smart enough, they will block you. So one, we need to know what they're looking at. We need to know what their passwords are and explain to them in love, listen, this is my responsibility towards God. I think in terms of TV as well, depending again on the age of the child, go through and see what you want your child to watch or what they might want to watch, and get them in the habit of saying, hey, mom, dad, this is what I'm looking at. What do you think? You know, this is something I would like to see. And if it is iffy, because we cannot, it is almost, I don't watch TV. But when I see other persons watching TV, I realize it's almost impossible to see something that is 100% clean. And
That
therefore,
is very
we have
true.
to keep the conversation going with our children, talk about the things that they're seeing rather than just letting it go. talk about it. And I mean, for example, okay, what's the thing on TV? The porn, the sex, the violence, the foul language. Talk about it with your children. Do you find this acceptable? What did you think about this? And sometimes, if you have the time, but you can't make the time, sit down and watch something with them that might be a little off, so that you can guide them through it. Because without you, they're going to watch it anyway. Maybe not in your home, but when they go by ex-friend or wife friend, or even maybe during lunchtime at school.
All righty. Let me go to something here because this time is going to go by quickly. I can see it going already. And let's deal with parents and the mixed messages. If we're talking about molding, who molds the mind of a child? Let's start within the home where it should start anyway. And as I started off saying, the mixed messages that some children get. They do as I say, not as I do kind of mentality. How can parents take responsibility and some practical advice as it relates to being at home, trying to mold these children's minds, or saying they are, but your children are seeing one type of behavior at home, another type of behavior, even for us who go to church. They see one thing at home, they see another behavior in church, they're confused. Or they're told to do this, but you get to do that. And bearing in mind, we're dealing with different types of families. There's so many families represented here where people will be viewing. So Cornelius, you want to handle that? Parents and mixed messages and molding minds.
Yeah, I'm gonna get bring that out in this statement. I think that there are too many lazy parents and there are too many busy parents. Let me repeat that. I think there are too many lazy parents and too many busy parents. Now, there are lots of people raising children now who at age 16, they don't really know their child and their child don't really know them. Sounds crazy, right? Now, as Dr. Emil was speaking earlier, I was thinking that, you know, a lot of people are leaving their children to be passive consumers of content, whether it's on YouTube or television. But the truth of the matter is that I want us to place a closer focus on what happens to your child when you leave your child constantly consuming. I've observed it with my children when they watch too much television or when my son played video games for too long. There is, for some reason, and I'm not a social scientist, I'm not a psychologist, but I have observed that your child's ability to think critically is removed the more they're exposed to video games and constantly watching TV, looking to see who is doing this on YouTube and who is doing that. Now, we're talking about, you asked me the question about mixed messages. The truth of the matter is that sometimes children get no message from their parents. So we talk about mixed messages, but sometimes they get no message. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that as responsible parents, we need to make sure they get a message from us. And I'm saying that one of the things that I did, and I have to draw on myself because I didn't have any experience until I didn't have any experience in the job before I got the job as parent. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn on the job. But I think it's something that God has put in me to recognize that the more quality time you put in with these children, the better it would be for them in the end. And one of the things I realized that worked for me is that I created relationships. So for example, I run a business. Now, I could have chosen to be a workaholic and be in the office till 7 o'clock at night. Or I could choose, I make my own hours, so I would go and pick up my son at 3 o'clock and we would go to the beach. We would build sand castles, we would catch crabs. Sometimes we would sit, all of us as a family would sit down and we'll have movie night or family night on Friday nights, for example. These may seem like old-fashioned things, but these are things. Now my son is 14 years old, for example. And it almost brings tears to my eyes sometimes when I see what a wonderful 14-year-old, so thoughtful, articulate. In fact, I was trying to get him to come on this evening and he said, no, he don't like to be public, but I'm gonna get him on.
Oh, he would have been perfect getting the other side.
We're gonna have one with him, but I'm saying that the depth of thought, and I thought to myself, because I'm a conversationalist, you cannot be a child in my house and not be engaged in conversation, whether it's about politics, sports, life, drugs, how people get on drugs, what happens to the brain when this happens. These are all things. I love engagement. And what I find is that there are a lot of bored children, because when you listen to children nowadays, when you mention, they say, I'm bored. I am bored. You know why they're bored? Because their minds are not being stimulated from playing cricket, playing football, going to the beach and building sandcastles. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm telling you, observation has worked for me. I can tell you that the more you engage a child, the more intelligent that child will be. Because that child will know, that child's mind will now be trained about thinking. Can you imagine sitting down, going to your workshop, and teaching your child how to build maybe a little roller or a little toy from scratch, or put together a puzzle, or playing, that's another thing, you see those old board games, like Chinese checkers, draft, chess. When you sit down and play those games with your child's mind is being stimulated 1,000 times more than they would be playing PS4. Contrary to people don't realize it, PS4, those games are programmers' view of limitation. Your children are actually being boxed in their thinking when they play video games. But when you play a game of chess or game of draft or game of Connect Four, you play a football game or a cricket game or something where that child is forced to think, what you're doing is you are developing a set of thinkers for the next generation. So really and truthfully, mixed messages. So I say that sometimes these children are getting no messages. So before we get to mixed messages, we need to get to the point of recognizing that some children are getting 0 messages from parents. They're just being ignored. And that's why you see a lot of children at all ages are thinking about suicide, because they are lonely, they're ignored, they're abandoned, they're in the house getting all of the brand names and all that. But the truth of the matter is that the love that they ought to feel from a parent who cares enough to say, listen, you're going to bed by 8 o'clock. Or a parent who cares enough to say, where you got that from your school bag? No, because contrary to popular belief, children actually enjoy you putting restrictions. Boundaries, because it shows that you care.
All right, well, not what it sounds like, what you know. How do you take it from, because yes, the focus is on children, but let's face it, we've got the parents to deal with first. If we look around, and we don't have to look far, there are many parents who didn't have that experience from their parents. So they don't have a legacy of playing with dad, of sitting down with mom and learning certain things, or the family going out. So you have this watering down of legacy. What can we do to help parents? Now, we've got great organizations like Paradox, but sometimes when you say to some parents, you can go and have some parent education classes, and they're like, well, I don't need a parent education class. I already have a child. Because some people think having a child makes you a good parent. No, you just gave birth to a child. So what can we do to bridge that gap between the parent learning to be a better parent and the child then getting some more attention, i.e. legacy passed on and proper messages? We need to give some practical things. Dr. Veronica, you have any ideas there? Help us.
Well, the thing is, I think we have become such a quote unquote foolishly sophisticated society. We have forgotten so much that we learned, and we have institutionalized everything. So everything is a program, everything is a policy, everything has to have a consultation, and everything is just too formal and too institutionalized. And that is where I think that we as Christians, and not just Christians, because there are persons who are really lovely people, but they haven't yet given their hearts to Christ. Reach out to anybody you see. My children, sometimes they would say to me, Mom, you have to be careful, because I can't hold back myself. And where I see somebody doing something wrong, I'm right there. One day I was going to buy bread from, how they sell bread on the road. And this lady is coming up holding a little child, maybe 3, 4. And she is effing and she is going on. Woo! Well, I was not buying bread anymore. And I stopped and I said, listen, that is a little child. How can you be thinking? And man, she took me to task. But I took her to task too. She went, she bought her bread, kept quiet. And as she was coming down, I said, listen to me. When you hear this child at 10 years old using those same words, you are going to beat him. You might even abuse him, but you are the one that's teaching him. I say, and when he's all messed up, he'll come to people like me. And do you know, little by little, that lady settled down. And it must, I don't know what effect it had on her after, but she just came down. She started off by telling me off. It's none of my business. But then, you know, and sometimes we just have to take that risk. It, I keep saying, we have to learn we have to learn how to mind each other's business, not in an officious way, but we need to learn to be concerned. You need to learn to reach out, and not just for the negatives, but to reinforce. You know, for example, I was in a store and this man was with his son, and you should hear how he was teaching the son and saying, yeah, we won't get this one because that. And I had to go to him and say, you're doing a good job. You know, and that, I think, we just have to be, as Christians and as normal people, don't forget the programs and don't forget the counseling, because I'm a counselor. But at least in everyday life, let's just live for each other. Take another example at the bank. And this little child, now I did something I shouldn't do. You know, they have the stuff cordoned off. So instead of me walking up, down, until it was my turn, I just lifted and stood up at the back. And the little boy said, Daddy, why she do that? And he, mind your own business and da la la. And I had to stop him and say, listen, that's a very intelligent question he asked. One, he recognized that I had broken the rule. Two, he was asking for an explanation. Why would you shut up your child for something like that? That's where you should be encouraging them. And all of this is part of molding the mind. So that I would say, let us, every single person, when we see a parent doing well, congratulate them. Even if we don't know them, just give them a pat on the back. And when we see them not doing something that's good, if we have the courage and if they don't have a gun, just lovingly correct them.
Carol?
I love it. Yes, Cornelius.
There was something I just remembered, but I wanted to address the whole thing about the what can we do to help. But before we get to that, I just want to say this, and it was kind of nudging me that I didn't give full justice to the question you asked earlier, double standards. When children know that they can trust you in terms of your consistency, it makes a whole lot of difference. I remember when my son was probably about 6 years old. And by the way, I don't believe in corporal punishment. I believe in punishment, but I don't believe in spanking my children. My daughter is 11, 12 years going. I never spanked her even once like that. It's not necessary, but that's a different topic.
Yes.
But my son, he was playing with the rope in the bank, you know, the rope that separates the lines. And a lady said to him, why don't you stop anything that before your father beat you? She said, no, my father's not going to do me anything. He usually gives you 2 warnings first, and he hasn't said anything yet. So he knows what to depend on. And to this day, my children knows me. If I tell them I'm going to go to St. Lucie and pick up mango from a mango tree that overhanging a cliff, they know that it's done. Because they can trust my word. If I say I'm going to do something, it will happen. If I say you'll be punished, you will also be punished as well.
Yes.
Because I'm very strict when it comes to, I'm very zero tolerant when it comes to punishing, to let you know that this was wrong. But I just don't believe in corporal punishment. Now, to what can we do? You asked a very good question, Carrie. I love the way you coined it, you know. We didn't have any examples or legacy of all this great stuff that we want to do. Now, I would say that like most of us, I didn't have any perfect childhood. I didn't have, both my parents broke up when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And I didn't have an example, but here's what I had. I believe now, I didn't know then, but I believe now that God deposited a desire within me to be a great parent. I believe that without any shadow of doubt in me. I used to sit and dream of the kind of parent that I wanted to be. I used to sit and dream as a primary school boy, the wife that I would have, the car that I would have, the house I would have. I dreamt of my life as an adult, and it included children. And when I became a parent, I decided that all the things about my childhood that I didn't like, that I would not pass on. And the things that I like, I will pass on. So I like the value systems of going against stealing, of showing kindness to people, of giving. My mom was a person who believed in giving. You should always give. You should not spend all of your money on yourself, you should give. And what I decided to do is I decided to impart a lot of that to my children. So for example, each time I speak to my children, or most times when we part, I normally say, I love you. I didn't get that growing up. My son is 14 years old, and I would hug my son and give him a kiss on his cheek. I didn't get that at 14 years old from my dad, right? But I'm saying that we can create a new normal. So that's one point. The next point I want, because time I know is flying, is that what can we do with other parents who don't have it going on like we do? Yes. Here's what I want to say. And I want us to listen carefully to this, because this is my testimony. Each of us have friends that we can influence. As a man, I have male friends that are very close to me. I have 3 male friends that are like brothers. And I have other males that I know from the gym and places of the cricket club and wherever else. And everybody will tell you, in all of my spheres, in conversations and by example, I try to leave something with everybody. So for example, people would know that I'm consistent. I'm the one who would always take my son to cricket, for example. I'm the one who every morning I would make sure and walk my son to school at St. Cyprian's, for example. And you know, there are things that I would always do. I would be the one to get involved in the PTA. I'm just saying that we need to make sure that we influence others around us. I have a close friend whose wife said to me, you know, I'm glad that you're my husband's friend. And I remember when he had his first son, he didn't get it. And I kept saying, listen, do not allow your wife to be the main influence in your son's life. You should be doing that. Take him with you. When you're going to wherever to watch a game, or when you're going to the village where you grew up, take him with you. And he didn't get it with the first son, but he got it with the second one. Yeah. So I just want to say that yes, we can create a new normal. I am an example and a living testimony of a new normal. There's nothing about my lifestyle as a father that was spoken to by the way my father was with me. My father was a great man who did the best he could based on his limited knowledge and understanding. And I thank God for him, and I have utmost respect for my dad, who is now passed. I also have utmost respect for my mom, who was, to me, a national hero. But again, both of my parents, I know for a fact, without any shadow of doubt in my heart, they did the best they could with the limited knowledge they have. However, I have gone to the next step. And I want to see my children go to the next step even above me. And I want to see my grandchildren go to the next step. So this is about creating legacies that goes one step up each time. One step up. So I want my son to be a better father than I was to his sons and daughters. Wow, and I want you get what I'm saying? So what I try to teach my children, and every moment almost is a teachable moment. I'm like a nerd when it comes to children. And not only my children. Carol, if you have a child, and you come and help with me for an afternoon, you're going to see me focusing a lot on your child. And I'm going to be tapping their minds to find out what they're thinking. I'm going to be having a conversation, and all of them I'm tapping. And if I play a game with them and they only focus for like 2 minutes, I say, well, this child has a problem with focusing. This child is not able to concentrate for more than 2 minutes. I'm always analyzing. I'm not, as I said, a psychologist, but I just enjoy life. I enjoy people. I enjoy children. I believe that God has put me on the earth to make a difference in terms of human beings. And the older I get, I'm beginning to realize that it is irresistible for me. I will give up everything and do everything about helping people to be better for free. I don't need it. I mean, it's a purpose, because Miles Monroe said that you know your purpose when you're willing to get up every day and do something with full vigor and energy, even if you're not being paid the same.
Even if you're not being paid for it.
Yeah, and right now in this discussion, I know we don't have the time, but I would love to be discussing this for another 3 hours. But
we definitely don't have that time, but I like it. And my big takeaway from that is that regardless of what your background is or was, you have to make a decision, especially if you're going to take on the biggest role a human being can take on, as far as I am concerned, is being a parent. You have to make the decision that no matter what happened in the past, I'm going to be the best parent that I can be. It may not be clear as to what that looks like, and that's where you can reach out for help. So as we tick down, I'm not even sure how much time we've got left. I
Well,
assume another.
before, really, I just want to say, give me 10 seconds. I just want to say this, right? I want to encourage people, especially parents, to dream and encourage your children to dream. You see, dreaming is what caused me to be the parent that I am today.
Mm,
And dreaming is what creates children who will be the inventors of tomorrow, who will be better parents of tomorrow. Dreaming. I want to leave that word to the listeners. You dream, keep dreaming, and encourage your children to dream.
I got you. All right, Dr. Veronica, I just wanted to look at that same thing that we were just discussing, making the decision to be a better parent. You are a counselor. Give us about 3 practical things we can do moving forward, because you cannot focus on the mistakes.
Not at all.
Once children, I find once children, even if you mess up, and that's for any parent watching now, you know that you messed up or you have a strained relationship with your child. I find most children, even adult children, if they recognize that you're sincere with an apology or you come to them in a sincere way, they want to have that relationship. So basically three practical things that we can do as parents to be better moving forward.
Well, one, even though we are very, very busy, we have to make time for our children. And where we have more than one child, make time for each child, even if it's a little 5 minutes, because children don't like if they come to you and they say, Mom, Dad, and you say, give me a minute, I'm watching TV. They feel rejected. So somehow make time, even if it is just 5 minutes that your child can depend on once a week. Let that be a treasured moment that they look forward to.
Let me jump in there quickly.
Yeah.
Jump in there really quickly. What you said there about give me a minute, and you're not meaning it. That basically stuck out to me, because I remembered with my son, I did that at one point when he was very young. He's going to be 20 this year. And he came back to me and he said, Mommy, a minute went an hour ago and you still haven't spoken to me. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And from then on, we had this thing, if he wanted to talk, even if I was busy at the time, I had to give him a specific time. And once I gave him that specific time, I had to stick to that time. And that made a difference. So if you're going to say, give me a minute, let me a minute. Or give them, schedule them into your busy schedule. Go ahead.
Let them be a part. I mean, they are as important as your work. They are more important than your work. I remember once at work, I will not say where, we were having a meeting and this thing was going on and on and on. And I said, I have to leave now to go and pick up my children from school. And one other guy who knows me quite well, he looked at me, he said, man, just fax them over. But I made my thing and I left and I went for my children. You cannot say, I am in a meeting and I cannot leave. No way. I will hear the whatever transpired in that meeting for the half hour that I had to leave. We have to communicate to our children a sense of worth. Now, your son must be very intelligent and expressive, because at least he came and he told you. Another child would just have, you know, and it would hurt, and they would not even be able to cry. They would just feel very rejected, and they'd go to school the next day and act out, and you would wonder why. We have to recognize that our children, human beings, flesh and blood human beings, are as important as our work. They don't come with a dollar sign, but they are important. So first, time. Your teen needs your time. Your tot needs your time. Two, for goodness sake, read. And if you don't want to read, go on the internet, do YouTube, do something with parenting, look up Focus on the Family, read, listen. It's so much easier now. If you don't want to read, or even if you cannot read, listen to a YouTube video. There's a lot that you can learn, and surround yourself with other persons who can help you. I think too, just a very simple thing is placing things around your house. You know, Deuteronomy talks about wearing it as a phylactery on your forehead, talking about it when you get up and when you lie down. And we know with our wisdom have decided that doing that is indoctrinating your children and imposing your views on them. But you know what? We have to indoctrinate our children because society is indoctrinating them anyway. So they can't escape the indoctrination. It's just a matter of who is molding that mind. And so I think just nice little positive things, a nice little magnet on the fridge, something in the bathroom, you know, something in the bedroom. I remember when I was small, now I grew up, I had a single parent dad because my mom died when we were very small. I'm the seventh of 8 children. It was a whole string band of us. But daddy was such a wise parent. I mean, I would kiss the ground my father walks on. And I remember in our bedroom, it was my sister and we had a bunk bed. And he had 2 pictures. I can still see them. One with a little boy kneeling down, and one with a little girl kneeling down praying. You cannot imagine what effect, what influence that has had on me all of my life. He didn't say a word, he just had those 2 pictures. And every time I slept, I would see those pictures, and those pictures spoke to me. On our coffee table, he had the bust of somebody, I don't even know who it is, but the person was holding a book open, and the book said, Death, but not sin. And that spoke to me too, because it said, listen, keep away from sin. So that just little things that we might put in our homes, songs that we might pray, and then develop nice little routines, have meal times, have fun times, even if it is getting some chicken necks and having them, you know, have fun with your family, because you can't always be the big bad wolf. In my family, Lord God, I was the big bad wolf, maybe, you know, but you still have to find time to forget the big bad wolf and say, hey, let me kiss you up and eat you up and love you up. It has to be balanced, and you have to develop that relationship with your child. Let them do things with you. Let them wash the dishes with you and you talk. Watch TV with you, clean the yard with you, just and then play games, have fun, ask them what they want to do. Those are some of the things that I think can help to bring up our children and mold their minds and put stuff into them, good stuff that can then come out.
Well, thank you, Dr. Veronica Evelyn and Cornelius Bartlett. I believe we are pretty much out of time, but as we talked about who or what influences the mind of your children, first of all, it has to start at home. We have the manual, the Bible as our guide. Even if you're not a believer, you make sure that you're the primary influence. Get help if you need help. Spend time. Make sure you pour in those good values. Make sure you model those good values. Take back your relationship with your child. Don't let work and all those kind of things get in the way of who and what influences your child. In this entire environment with the COVID-19 and coronavirus, where parents were now at home instead of the children being at school, you see how important it is. You see how much time is invested in your children. Some of you are frustrated because you don't know how the teachers do it, but it's also probably been one of the most exciting time for your children because you know what? They finally got to spend time with you. So we as parents, we have to decide from today who is going to influence the minds of our children. That's it. There's more coming for Family Fest, more for Children's Week. I'm Carol Toppin. Bye-bye.
We're Family Fest.